I'm going to give the floor to Mr. Guersent, Director General of DG Competition, to wrap up this afternoon of exciting conversations. My question was, do you or do you not have yet an avatar on the metaverse? That's my question. I'll leave it from here. Thank you.
Well, thank you. No. I'm not on LinkedIn, I'm not on Facebook, I'm not on Twitter, I'm not on anything. I do boring things, I read. I'm not on TV either, I don't watch TV, except for rugby games, but that's another story. No, I'm admirative of people that do all this and still find time to talk with people, like in real, around the family table, to read books, and I couldn't, so I made my choice. Anyway, well, it's good to be here, and it's a great feeling of optimism. I mean, not only because you're young, but also because you're young, frankly. And everybody's telling me you're having a great time, and for the little bit I could testify myself, it seems so, indeed. And that the conference has spurred a spirited debate on the future of competition policy. And this is what we need. I mean, because, I see my friend Jacques, and I thank him and the colleagues from competition authorities for having been with us today. The least that can be said is that we are not the future of competition policy. We have had our time. And it's good to see that youngsters come with enthusiasm, new ideas to take their turn. And of course, nobody really knows what the future holds in general, but in particular for competition policy. But what I can say is that the expertise, the commitment, the passion, everything you display in your discussions, this is a good reason to be optimistic for the future. Another reason why maybe walking into this room lifted my spirit is the concentration of so much young talents. And this is exactly what the Young Expert Conference is all about. But now that I can see you physically, emphasis on physically, sitting around this table, I can see that this is not a dialogue with youth, but as Margrethe Vestager told you a moment ago, this is a dialogue by youth. And that is great. And then there is a third reason, and that is one that is no specific to competition policy or even to today's conference. But as I said, emphasis on physically. When I walked into this room, I said, well, finally a meeting in person. Real people. How would that feel on the metaverse, you think? Well, no, I would be young, nice, and pretty, of course. As in real, you see. But no, I mean, I don't know. I'm old-fashioned. I like physical interaction. I like to see people. I like to see their body language. And I'm not that interested in their avatars, or actually my avatar. Anyway, we're not out of the wood yet, of course. This meeting is still hybrid. In the good old days, it would have been a fully physical conference. But, touching wood, we hope the worst is over. So, the first key word for me is optimism. And this is the word I wanted to share with you. And your lively debate this afternoon, that fueled me really with optimism. And I think it's absolutely key that you continue to be just as committed to fuel a path for competition and competition policy. Because competition policy is under attack. Competition policy is also subjected to wide demands to accommodate a number of objectives that are not exactly the core of what it is meant to do. And we'll need to design new paths. And for this, of course, what would be better than a bunch of young and committed talents? The second word I'd like to share with you is courage. And you will agree with me that you all are quite courageous. You've been quite brave to come here in the temple of European bureaucracy, also of competition policy, I hope. And I'd like to thank you all. I'd like to thank the members of the scientific committee, the speakers, the video makers, all of you for accepting our invitation and for investing so much of your time, of your imagination, of your skills in making this conference a success. The scientific committee has taken bold decisions at every step of the process since they started the work on the conference. It was in June last year, so a bit more than 6 months ago. They designed it in an innovative way, in my view, drafted a forward-looking call for papers, selecting thought-provoking topics for discussion, and now turning to the video makers, their task was squeezing complex arguments into a few short minutes. That's not so easy. So thank you to all of you. I won't ask you how many takes you've taken before you were happy with the result, but I guess a number, maybe. And as to the 6 speakers, of course you were courageous. Your courage lies, in my opinion, in a quite important detail, because I understand your moderators gave you just a few minutes. I just testified it again, so I don't have to be courageous because I was left all the time I wanted. But you had to be, because you had to condense your thinking. You have to tell your stand in a very condensed way, and that takes intelligence and courage, of course. And of course, I understand they also deliberately steer the debate towards the points where your views would diverge. So that is what makes it interesting, and that forces you also to stand for what you believe. So all this is very good, and not easy, of course. The participants in this room and online have also taken a little risk. You had no idea what the speakers would be like when you signed up. So that's a bit of a risk, of course. And you had no idea what the debate would be like. And that, of course, was exactly the point. So we engineered it exactly, purposely in that way. And we've been very clear about it. In all our messages, we've told you that taking competition policy into the future was designed to turn the tables. The expert of tomorrow would be in the limelight, while the expert of today, maybe of yesterday, were invited to listen and engage with them. So it's comforting to see that so many of you have responded to this initiative. Over 350 participants that registered for the event from 46 countries. So I would like to thank you all for being part of this conference. And it's not only about how many you are. That's important, of course, but it's also about how diverse you are and about the positions you take in your respective organization and the position you hold as well all around the world, and how you can able to make things move forward. You are practitioners, you are students, you are academics, consultants, sometimes fellow public servants in the EU institutions or in other competition authorities or government bodies or international organizations. And of course, I want to greet personally my fellow heads of competition authority who registered also as participants, Jacques here, but also Mirta, the president of the Competition Council of Croatia, and Peter in Prague, as well as Pierre, the president of the Luxembourg Competition Authority. And it is also comforting to see that the Young Experts Conference has piqued interest beyond competition circles. We have a dozen of participants representing NGOs that advocate for a variety of things, from a greener planet, a fairer economy, the need to narrow down the north-south divides, and a range of other causes. I'm happy to see that this kind of interest in the future of competition policy, because it confirms my idea that the implication of our work are broader that some of us maybe would think. Nobody can deny that we have a well-defined core business, of course. And I don't need to spell it out in your presence. But even our core objective, lower prices, wider choice, consumer empowerment, enhanced innovation, all of these bring benefits that are felt across the entirety of the society. And in this sense, competition policy can be thought of a transversal kind of a social policy. And there is another argument that I like to use to show the full reach of competition policy. Imagine what Europe would be without a competition control system that has served us for the past 6 decades. I'm convinced, I started in competition policy, don't tell anybody, 30 years ago. I'm convinced that without its competition policy, here in Brussels and the ECN, the European Competition Network, throughout the 27 member states, Europe would have been a less prosperous and a less innovative place. And probably it will also have been a more unfair and a more unequal place. But I know from experience that not everybody agrees with this kind of statement, that this type of objectives are relevant to competition policy and enforcement. Some argue that we'd better stick to what they call the core business, the narrow perimeter. I am not of this view. I do not want to develop long arguments, but for me, competition policy, in the end of the day, is just one policy, among others. We're not above other policies. We are trying to make competition work within the limits that are defined by the legislators that are elected by the people. So there is no ranking. It so happens that competition policy has a specific place in the European Union, but it has a duty, in my view, within the limit of its core mandate, of course, to try to help the broader policy objectives of the Union. Transition to low-carbon economy, digital transition, building a more resilient industry in Europe, which, by the way, means diversifying and securing your international value chains, something that competition does quite well. So all this is relevant to competition policy. Many of us remember what enforcing competition rules was like before the digital revolution. And our discourse is informed by this fact. I mean, we see a before and an after. But our young experts take digital developments, including developments in artificial intelligence, for example, as facts of life. I have to say, personally, I have difficulties to understand what artificial intelligence really means. And that's simply a sign of my age, and that's another reason why we need you. We need people that are born in this digital age, because you understand it somewhat better. It's intuitive for you, it's not for us. And you have listed practical ways for legislators and enforcers to regulate these industries and harness the power of the new technologies. And some of these suggestions point at paths that we're already exploring, and other looks to us like moonshots. And that's precisely the reason why we come to conferences like this, and sometimes even we organize them, because it brings us something, it brings us food for thought, it helps us modernizing our competition policy. But what I want to stress above all is the attitude. The first panel made it clear, starting from its very title, expanding the powers of competition authorities. And in recent time, quite a few business players and opinion leaders from across Europe have been having, say, different views, rather putting competition policy under the spotlight. And our speakers today have taken the opposite stance, courage. And it seems to me that for them, the right question to ask is, what else competition policy can do? What can it do better? Let me give you a few examples picked at random from the videos and the panel discussions. We have heard, among other things, that competition policy can promote media plurality, that it can help us monitor the digital industry and better prepare us for the next crisis when the COVID-19 pandemic gets finally under control. So the change in perspective is undeniable. And our young experts seem to have a very different view of the kind of talk that belongs with competition policy and enforcement than this opposition between competition policy and welfare. And that is very welcome. Because this view, this attitude, bring together the two key terms that I have used in these remarks, optimism and courage. Because they are encouraging, they are intellectually brave. To use the words Executive Vice President Vestager used to close our remark earlier this afternoon, if the future of competition policy looks like you, if it lies with us, there are reasons to be optimistic. Thank you.
Thank you, Director General. Sorry, I should take this off, maybe. I'll be very brief. You said we were brave to enter the temple of competition policy, but I think this was not a given. It also took bravery and a certain type of vision of you to open the doors of the temple for us, for the new generation, instead of keeping them shut. So thank you for that. And thank you for all the team from DG Competition that helped us along the way, specifically Ubaldo and Marlene. Great help. This would not have, yeah, Marlene and Sylvie. Yes, thank you. I'm going to thank also everyone who joined us remotely and in person here in Brussels. I hope the conference met your expectations. I personally, it exceeded mine, and I helped prepare it. So you can, if that's the case for you as well, you can re-watch on demand the panels and the videos on the same website. And feel free to fill in the questionnaire about how did you like this. And thank you so much. That's it. See you in other events. Thank you.